Hello and welcome to the chaos. I'm Tracy Canella and I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Olympia, Washington. Welcome to Calming the Chaos. So, today I am going to talk about some of the items of chaos I've been seeing in our world. Specifically, I've been hearing the words chaos and I've been hearing the words red flags. And so I thought I would do a little video about chaos and red flags, and specifically with acts of violence. So, since November, I think I've really been activated since the Oxford High School shootings and just the violence that our young people are exhibiting, and how it might be a symbol of like a greater dissatisfaction with our world today, and how our young people are really that barometer, right? So there are a lot of these incidents. There's Uvalde. Everybody knows about all those little kids that were killed, and then this last one here in Illinois. I don't want to go into specifics about it because I don't want to give killers glorification, but I do want to honor the victims and anybody who has been harmed in any way by any of these senseless crimes. So, one of the things that I've been hearing is about chaos. So, what happens with shootings, and believe me, this is not going to be about guns, all right? Because a person can perform an act of violence with their own body, it doesn't have to be a gun. So, this is more about an act of violence or acts of violence. You can do it with anything. You can do it with a stick, you can do it with a knife, you can do it with a gun, you can do it with your own body. So please don't say that I'm anti gun. And I am dipping my toes into a little warmer water here and just starting to get into a little bit more of a heated topic when I talk about this. It's not about the guns in this video, okay? Maybe I'll make a video about guns in another video. It just so happens, though, that guns were involved in this latest 4th of July event when a Highland Park shooter just kind of went off on the people in a parade and the bystanders. So, what I want to talk about here is red flags, because everybody's saying, oh, we should have seen this, we should have seen that, we should have seen that, we should have known that. Why wasn't this person captured or prevented from doing what they did, And I'm going to show you something like a model that I've actually developed. I have no idea if it's good or not. You can tell me that. Um, but, you know, I'm thinking about a couple of different things. One, like, what is a red flag? Okay. So, a couple of things that red flags are: biology. If you have people in your family who have committed crimes, you likely have biology, genetics, and all that other stuff. To like mental health conditions, you have all of that stuff programmed within you that makes you susceptible to doing something extreme like this, like using a weapon or using your body or killing somebody or hurting somebody or doing acts of violence, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, because even though you have the genetics, or if you do, the environment actually does program what you're going to do. You are programmed by your environment, by your family, by your friends, by your school systems, and your psychology develops because of that. And then there's social media in these days. There's social media that can contribute to the thinking that you have, the brain that you have in your head about doing these crimes, about even thinking about doing these crimes. And then almost always we have trauma. Like, in almost always, I don't even think I can think of a person who has done mass violence or has done a crime that doesn't have trauma in their background. And trauma comes from family, trauma comes from friends, trauma comes from little people being overpowered and unfairly overpowered by people in power. And trauma comes from natural disasters, trauma comes from war, trauma comes from walking down the street and getting assaulted. So these sorts of things need to be taken into consideration. Also, we want to take into consideration whether a person is being under the influence of substances, particularly meth. Okay, let's just put it on out there. Meth and alcohol are the two substances that are going to help a person who is already kind of thinking about committing a crime commit the crime. And so we want to consider that as a red flag. Then there's also, if you've got a traumatic brain injury or if you've got low energy, low frustration tolerance, and even when you go upon the woo woo, like the whole like evil spirits, like maybe a person's possessed by the devil. Hey, I believe that. If a person has enough trauma, their energy field's going to be impacted, and then any sort of evil spirits can get in there. There, I just said it. So acts of violence can involve guns, but they don't have to involve guns. Again, they can involve abuse or neglect, can also be, a sign of acts of violence of children, especially, or vulnerable adults. All right. So again, this video is not about guns or about gun control, but here we are talking about these things that are happening in our world. Like here we are, and wow. All right. So we've got the Oxford shooter. We got the thing in New York. I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was at the grocery store. And then we've got the Uvalde school shooting. And then we've got this thing at Highland Park. Uh, oh, wow. At the same time, in foreign countries, in Denmark, there was a mass shooting. And then also in Japan, there was a homemade gun. And a person just said, I was dissatisfied with this person. And I was really actually, I was dismayed to hear that this person was, had killed this person, this prime minister candidate or whoever he was. But I was actually really happy that they said, yeah, I was dissatisfied, because I think that that really gives us a bit of a clue about why these things are happening. People are very dissatisfied for a variety of different reasons. The dissatisfaction needs to be addressed. People think that mental illness is at the very end of the problem. Like, we've got to deal with mental illness, so get them to counseling. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I get all kinds of people asking me for help. And, it is just so daunting for me to be asked for help so much and not be able to provide the help. So, yes, I understand that there's a mental health crisis out there. I actually do. But it's not just about the mental health, it's about where the mental health actually went awry, which is in the family, which is within the family, which is in the mom and dad, which is within the trauma, which was in any kind of acts of violence that happened to a kid when they were growing up. So now I'm going to introduce you to something that has been really tugging at my heartstrings since probably November of 2021, when the Oxford high school shootings happened. Is that, what are we doing as a nation, as people? Are we asleep? Are we awake? Are we aware? Are we reporting things? What is it? And so, what we're going to do now is I'm going to introduce to you a decision tree. A decision tree is something that we use in psychology to be able to decide, if not this, then this, or if this, then this. And it helps us to understand what it is that is happening in our world. And so, forgive me if this is just sort of simplistic, or if there's mistakes. You can absolutely correct me and we can have this as a work in progress. But here's what I've come up with. I'm going to share with you this decision tree that I've come up with. So, as you can see, this is a pretty big decision tree. And so, what this decision tree is like, what to do with red flags, chaos and red flags. What would you do? Would you give up, or would you try again? So, hopefully, you can see my cursor. My cursor here is at the red flag. So, if there is a red flag and there is a yes, are you actually noticing the red flag? Right? If there's no red flag, Celebrate. There's a normal person in your midst, right? Or you're a normal person. So there's no need to go on, celebrate. But if there is a red flag and you notice it, so there's a yes or a no, right? So if you don't notice it, there's potential for future damage. If you do notice it, or is action taken, or is it reported? So this is what we call the bystander effect if it's not reported. So look here, if you go down here, if we notice it, but we have the opportunity to report it, but we don't, then the bystander effect is one of those where you notice it, but you don't report it because you're scared or because you're in shock. And that has been, a very well researched sort of term, the bystander effect. But if you do notice and report and act upon what you see, now this can be either abuse, a neglect, a crime, even like, when I'm thinking about George Floyd, all those people were, grabbing out their cameras and they were recording everything, but they weren't jumping in and charging at the cops and trying to save George Floyd's life, right? Because they're likely scared that they would get shot and killed themselves or whatever, right? Um, but you know what I mean? Like, how are we reacting upon these things that we see? So, if there is action taken and reported or act upon, the one thing that I would like to say is like, is it reported correctly? Because I think a lot of those people in the George Floyd incident thought that they were going to be able to report it correctly by just sitting there with their phones. However, if somebody of power and size or somebody who had some sort of inkling that could charge the cops or I don't know, maybe in hindsight, of course, this is all 2020, but what could have happened differently? Was it reported correctly? A person died. It wasn't reported correctly or acted upon, and there was potential future damage. In George Floyd's case, it was a death. So you see where I'm going here with this decision tree? So when you see a red flag, if you notice it or if you don't notice it, there is a potential for damage. You're going to need, if you want the society to change, you're going to need to try and stay aware and try and notice it. And then this no will go away, right? And if you notice it, then maybe you could report it. But then if you don't report it, there's going to be potential future damage. If you do report it and you report it correctly or act upon it correctly, then this is where the system comes into play. Is the system giving correct attention to your report? Are they taking it seriously? Are they actually making some sort of an effort to resolve your complaint? If no, again, potential future damage is out there. If yes, an action is taken upon your report, then it can go to a higher level, right? So we would like to know if there is attention given by the people in higher authorities and if action is taken upon the report that we have. And if there's not, then there's again potential for future damage. But if there is, then there might be some sort of intervention that could prevent law enforcement from even going and taking action themselves. So even if you take action, maybe law enforcement is sort of handcuffed right here. And if that is true, yes, then there is a potential for future damage. But if not, if they do have the right, or CPS or Adult Protective Services, Child Protective Services has the right to go in, then there might be a legal case opened. If not, then possibly again potential future damage, potential of a future harm or an act of violence against somebody else. But say we get to this point that a legal case is opened, right? There are two avenues that can happen here. One, the case can be dismissed, and two, the case can be allowed, right? Okay, so if the case is opened, it can be dismissed or allowed. If it's dismissed, again, the potential for future damage. If it's allowed, then justice could be served, maybe. If it is, celebrate, right? If it's not, will you appeal? Yes or no? Yes. That means you want to try again and you are actually thinking that your voice and your impact can make a difference. So you're going to try again, or no, you're going to give up and there might be continued future damage. This, I don't know. Again, I worked on this morning. It probably took me about an hour to do. I just love decision trees. I cannot tell you how much I love decision trees. And this one is one of my favorites because it just really speaks to my heart about what's going on in the world today. All right. So after we look at the decision tree and we sort of search our own hearts about like what are we going to do if we see a crime being committed or even if we see something going on about somebody's hitting a okay, well I had a situation where we were really close neighbors to somebody and I was just looking out my kitchen window and I saw like a disturbance in my neighbor's blinds. And then I saw a child's head being hit against the wall. I had to report it. And I did warn the mother of my neighbor that I saw it and that I'm reporting it and that she better not do it again in my sight because I'm a mandated reporter. I mean, this world is just very interesting as far as reporting goes. Now, obviously, CPS did nothing about that, and the child stayed with the mother. But it was interesting when I went over to the house that the child had a big bruise on her head, and it just broke my heart. So you could report something, but it doesn't go anywhere. But that doesn't mean you have to give up, right? The police, CPS, AP, Adult Protective Services, they're all out there to help you. I would just encourage everybody to just not give up if you feel like there's an act of violence or abuse. Here's what I want to talk about a little bit about values. Okay. So I'm going to try and pull up this clip here. This clip is from a news story out of Florida, I believe the Miami area. And I just want you to watch this and see what you think here. Check it out.
Roy Ramos live now in North Miami with an update for us tonight. Roy?
See how he's shaking his head? Oh my gosh. He is disgusted with this guy.
Calvin, and remarkably, no one was injured in any of this. Nearly a dozen shots fired. It all happened right here on the lanes of I-95. And the driver who opened fire says he did so because he thought he was being shot at. Chilling dash camera video obtained by talk show host Andy Slater showing the moments a road rage incident leads up to shots fired. You may remember when we first told you about the incident back in late June, 2 cars found riddled with bullets on the southbound lanes of I-95 near 135th
What a pathetic waste of car.
Street. We've now learned the driver you are looking at is 30-year-old Eric Popper.
Oh, Popper. Kind of like popping out the rounds, huh?
Investigators with Florida Highway Patrol said he was driving this black Toyota Venza when he abruptly cut off another driver. That driver begins to tailgate him when he's then seen slamming.
What did he just say? Fuck you is what he said.
On the brakes. Seconds later, state troopers say the driver pulls up to the passenger side and throws a water bottle at the vehicle when Popper quickly starts shooting right through his own window.
And destroys his car.
During the investigation, Popper told state troopers he believed he was shot at, so he began shooting.
Okay, I want to talk about this for just a second. No, Popper, you have values, the same values that we have about safety, about being able to defend your property, about freedom, about all these American things. But Popper, you are going about it the wrong way. Dude, this is extreme. This is over the top. Check yourself.
While surprisingly there were no reported injuries, Popper ultimately turned himself into Florida Highway Patrol.
Thank you. That was cool. That was cool. Thanks, Popper.
Was arrested and is now facing felony charges. And those charges include aggravated assault with a firearm. He has since bonded out of the Miami-Dade County Jail, but we are learning a little more about him. We've learned that he is a fire inspector. Right now, we're trying to find out what city he works for and if he is still employed. For now, here in North Miami, Roy Ramos, Local 10 News.
Here we are with this guy, and he's bonded out, and nobody was killed, nobody was hurt, but like, really? What is the behavior when we're dissatisfied? What is the behavior when we're scared? What is the behavior when we think that somebody is going to infringe on our property or infringe on our freedoms and our rights? I think this has just been really getting out of hand. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I super crazy or what? All right. I just want to say thank you to Scott Reich at Crime Talk, because when he did his live this last week on a Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm not sure what day, but he really pretty much echoed my thoughts about the situation, especially with the Highland shooter in Illinois. And I want you to listen to what Scott Reich has to say. I really appreciated what Scott had to say. And I was like, it was like I was looking into a mirror and saying, yeah, that is what I'm thinking. All right. So he is talking about the Highland shooter in Illinois during the 4th of July parade. Let's just go ahead and see what Scott Reich has to say here.
This kid was 21, for God's sakes. He's a young man. He's living in the basement, though.
He was actually living in a auxiliary dwelling just in back of the house. But anyway, Scott.
At a certain point, like, I don't care if you're 21. I don't think he had a job or something. What did
he used to have a job at Panera, but didn't have a job when he did this shooting.
Do? Sit around and play video games all day?
Yeah.
For the love of, why was his dad allowing that?
Right.
Okay. You are 21. Last I heard, there's plenty of jobs available.
Yeah.
Out there. If you can't go get a job, then hit the road. Who would allow that crap? And then this guy, he wasn't the same since after COVID. There's a lot of people that aren't the same after COVID. But guess what? They're not going out and shooting up parades, for God's sakes.
Right. Tell it, Scott.
People with mental illnesses.
Oh, here we go.
They know who they are.
They do.
Okay. Either they've been to counseling, they've been diagnosed by a psychologist or a psychiatrist and receiving medicines from a psychiatrist, or they're self-medicating with other drugs. They know who they are.
Yes, they do.
Okay. And, our country was founded on the general premise that we're free. And you shouldn't have your liberties and rights taken away unless and until you do something wrong. And then you should basically feel the wrath of the criminal justice system come down on you so that you are deterred from doing it again. And also that crushing of you also sends a deterrent effect to others that know about your punishment and your crime.
Yeah, but just like my flow chart said, or my decision tree said, many of our reports go either unfounded or uninvestigated, or the investigation doesn't result in anything. So what are we supposed to do? Well, we can either lose hope or we can continue to try. What do you think?
And it just doesn't seem like that's happening out there. And I'm a criminal defense attorney, ladies and gentlemen. I am telling you, as a member of the community, I see some things going on and I'm just like, are you crazy?
Right. He is a criminal defense attorney and he's talking about this stuff. It's like, I'm a licensed mental health counselor and I'm thinking the same thing.
Are you crazy? Giving everybody a big hug isn't going to do it.
Well, I am kind of touchy-feely and I like the hugs. But yeah, I mean, there's a point in time where you have to just say, gather up, Buttercup, and do something. Like, have committed action and take charge of your life.
Ignoring the problem, right? The big thing now, the buzzword in the law, the legal defense is holistic defense.
I like the way he did that. That was so zen. Holistic defense.
What the hell is that supposed to mean, right?
Oh my God. I just lost my earplug. I'm so sorry.
It used to be, I'm a defense attorney. These are your charges. Let's go see if we can beat it. And of course, you had to do the mitigation stuff. But now people are more interested in getting all the counseling and services for your client
Counseling and services, of course, you know.
than actually defending the case.
I know.
And maybe I'm just getting too old for this game.
And so am I.
Because what I've seen over the years is that you can send people to counseling, you can send people to therapy, but unless and until they are ready to change, it really doesn't matter.
Absolutely, Scott. Tell it.
I mean, I have clients that could teach the alcohol and drug education classes because they've attended them so many times over the years that they could teach it. They know it so well.
All right. I just love this rant. I will leave a link to this rant in the description for this video below. It was well worth watching, and I was just like, yes, God, do it. All right. So he said it perfectly. So, what are my final points here? Okay. First off, you guys noticing. Don't keep your head in your phone or in the sand. Notice what's going on around you. Please make a commitment to noticing. If you do value human life and safety and freedom and justice, you will do that. So I would implore you to do that first. The second thing you could do is anything that you do see, you would act upon. You would have committed action. You would not have the bystander effect. You would be able to report and report correctly, right? And you would do this because the victims that have already been harmed need you to help future victims, potential victims, from not being harmed. Please do not be a bystander. Please report. Please don't give up. All right. So let's just talk about the bystanders because, yeah, sometimes people fight, sometimes they flight, sometimes they freeze. Saying nothing and being a bystander is really not a great thing to do. Please, let's have something in the middle, perhaps a mindful response, like Scott Reich said. Let's just be mindful about this and report them. All right. Okay. I don't ask me what needs to change in our systems, but I do know that change really does start within ourselves. And so please look inward. Like Scott said, everybody who is mentally ill knows they're mentally ill. Please be a guardian of your own self. Please take charge of your mental illness. Please do not put our society at risk for you going off on them and hurting them, right? This whole thing, about acts of violence. Please, if you are not actually in favor of acts of violence, then don't do them. Take care of yourself. It just seems so simple to me. All right. So the last thing I would like to be able to say is that if you value safety, protection, freedom, and human life, please take care of yourselves, govern your behaviors. If you have an urge to do something that you don't believe is right or that you believe that might harm somebody, please call somebody. Please call the crisis line. Please call 1-800-SUICIDE. I'll have some resources for you down below in the show notes. So please take care of yourself and other people. This is a fragile planet. This is a really fragile time that we are going through right now as a people and as a race. So please take good care. And I will see you on my next episode. And what did you think about this intro? Here's my outro. Let's just do this, all right?